So typically we do about hour-long lessons. With the fantasy one and others, I have at least, I think, 20 now on the American Folk Library YouTube channel. So if you're interested in what my normal lessons look like, please just go over to the American Folk Library YouTube channel, click the Teen Writers Club playlist, and you can look through them all, see what you like, see what you don't like, so that will be more of a typical lesson. Any questions you guys have about writing? How to write, what you're writing, what you're interested in? Gwen feels like she has a question. She has the thinking face.
I think the short story contest, you
Yes.
said I showed a little bit too much. How do I tell?
That is a great point, because honestly, show don't tell is generally what you want to go for, absolutely. But sometimes you can show too much, and then the reader's going, I am seeing lots of things, but I have no idea what any of it means. So showing and not telling is generally what you want to do, but like Gwen said, you can actually show too much to the point where the reader's actually confused. So how do you tell in a tactful way? Is that what I'm assuming you're asking? Because telling like he did eat his cereal or whatever is boring. So I understand what you're going for. So with tactful telling, the best thing that you can do with tactful telling is metaphors or dialogue. Metaphors can help because then you can state something in a direct but indirect manner, therefore it feels more poetic, which makes it then again feel more tactful instead of just stating it like a fact. Whereas with dialogue you can actually do a lot of info dumping. You just have to be aware of what's called Maiden-Butler dialogue. Maiden-Butler dialogue is the classic, you know the master comes home at 3. Well, of course I know the master comes home at 3, so why are we talking about it? That's bad info dumping. However, if you have him say, I can't believe you didn't make dinner. You know he comes home at 3. Well, of course I know he comes home at 3. I'm stressed. That feels a lot more interesting, right? As far as dialogue goes. And it makes it so that you can tell, but do so in a way that feels tactful. So with your story, for instance, you're doing a lot of army stuff. You're doing a lot of stuff in, I think, a fantasy universe with question mark. That would help. I couldn't tell that it was a fantasy universe. One thing that you could have done to tell a little bit tactfully was you could have said like what name is on his uniform, because typically it's like U.S. Army or things like that, right? Whereas if you are from a different army, it would say something something army, so you could have said it on the lapel. The other thing you could have done to help indicate of fantasy is you could have worked on a little bit of fantasy setting a little bit and kind of tell us a little bit more about the fantasy setting. That way it feels a little bit more mysterious, and we're like, oh, well, we don't have trees with purple leaves, so clearly this can't be Earth. Just kind of small indicators. You don't necessarily have to say, this is not Earth, but just hint at the idea that it's not Earth. Because I loved the fact that you immersed us in it and immediately threw us into the story. That is good. Good positives. But you need to make sure that it's more clear where we are. I actually love this quote from Kayla Riviera. She was here for our all-day writers conference on Saturday. Oh my gosh. One of the things that she said that was my favorite thing, and I completely agree with it. Treat the reader as if you've kidnapped them, thrown them in a car, and you now have to explain why you need them. Because otherwise they're going to leave, right? They're going to be like, I'm out of here, there's no way I'm staying. But if you explain, you're the only one who can detonate the bomb and blah, 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 situation, then they're like, oh, okay, I'm intrigued, go on. Then they want to stay, right? They are intrigued, they want to keep going. So you got to make sure you treat your reader like you've basically kidnapped them. And in any way you have, you kidnapped them into your world, and you're trying to convince them, why should you stay here? But you also have to not only convince them why should you stay here, you have to explain where they are. Because most of the time, they're not where they are, right? They're not sitting in a chair in their house doing their regular life, right? It's a completely different story, regardless of if it's realistic fiction. It's still going to be a different family, a different school. More than likely, you aren't going to write about the exact same high school they went to. Probably. If you do, wow, that's impressive. Powers of telepathy are amazing. Any other questions as far as that goes? Thank you for the question, Gwen. That was an excellent question. Questions about writing in general? We could talk about characters, we could talk about plot. Yes?
So, like, what if, like, a character says something?
Yes.
And, like, you put in quotations, and then it says, like, who says it?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, sometimes in books
question. Thank you so much. I love that question because it is one that not a lot of people understand. So the fact that you've like caught on to that, you're just not sure how to do it yet. That is good. That is good. That is advanced progress. Most people don't even like acknowledge that. That is great. With dialogue tags, as they're called, there are 3 different types of dialogue tags, as you identified. There's the he said, she said classic dialogue tag. Then there's the action tag, which is, I don't know if this is gonna work. He fiddled with his hands. That's an action tag. So it's telling you who's talking by telling you what action he's doing. And then there's the third action dialogue tag, nothing, which is the most mysterious of all. I would say that the way you need to know when to do that is ultimately going to be your writer's instinct. Now, I know this feels like a terrible cheat answer, but it's true. Because honestly, most of the time, your writer's instinct will naturally know when to fill that in. I will say, if you want a general rule though, and you are like hard set on wanting a rule, I would say don't use he said, she said all the time. Use it like salt in a soup, just very sparingly. You want to make sure that people know who's talking at first, and then you kind of want to let them assume based on the dialogue, because the dialogue should be different enough that they should be able to tell who's talking. Unless there's like 27 people and you don't know 7 of them, that's a problem.
One scene in Alcatraz, which is supposed to be confusing, by the way.
Which is supposed to be confusing. I feel like that is an exception to the rule because it's supposed to be confusing.
Because it's Brandon Sanderson. He's pretty much the exception to everything.
Oh yeah, pretty much. Generally, if you're trying to write like Brandon, good luck, because he just breaks all the rules and then says they're mine now. But with dialogue tags, I typically would say he said, she said, use very sparingly. It's supposed to be helping to spice it up and indicators, but it's not supposed to be your go-to. I would say action tags are going to be your best friend.
Oh yeah.
Action tags are the best because then you can not only show what's happening, you can show if they're anxious. Instead of saying he said nervously, the fiddled with his hands indicates nervousness. You don't need to say he said nervously because it's obvious based on what we're seeing. Or like, she swallowed harshly the tears in her eyes. That indicates that she's sad. You don't need to say she said sadly. That's why she said, he said is sparing. Whereas action tags, like I said, they're going to be your best friend. And when in doubt, use an action tag. As far as leaving it blank, I would say about every 3 lines of dialogue, if you're having like a page of dialogue, you probably want to leave blank. The reason why is because of the fact that by then they've probably already figured out who's talking when and what they sound like, right? It's kind of like Ron, Hermione, and Harry, right? You generally know when Hermione's talking because she sounds very uppity and very like, I know everything, excuse you. So you don't really need a dialogue tag there because, well, who else could be talking? It's not Harry and it's not Ron for sure. So it's more about making sure that your dialogue is unique enough that when someone talks, you know exactly who it is. And that's going to help you be able to get rid of those dialogue tags and have less of them. So that way it flows a little bit better and it feels a little less, for lack of a better word, clunky. So thank you. That was a great question. Do you have any follow-up questions regarding that?
No.
Okay, good. Well, it was a great question. Anyone else have any other questions? Yes?
How do you make a side character that is relevant, but like too relevant that they become like
So you
a
don't.
big part of the
So
story?
you do want them to be relevant to become a big part of the story, or you don't?
Yeah, I don't.
Don't. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that I was clarifying because I couldn't quite tell based on the question. So good to clarify. So you don't want them to be a big part of the story, but you still want them to be a big part of the story. Is basically what I'm understanding. Not the main character, but like you still want them to have influence. You want them to be human. Okay, cool. Just making sure we're on the same page. All right. I'll be honest, with side characters, the best thing you can do is develop them like they're the main character. That way they feel like they are a person, they sound like they are a person. They ultimately are the main character in their own novel, in their head, right? That's how we all feel about ourselves, because we're living our lives. We can't help but feel like the main character because to us, we are the main character. You want to do the same thing with side characters. You want to just mold and create them as if they are the main character. Give them as much depth as you do the main character. But then you have them take their place. And when I say take their place, I just mean that if you don't want them to be a huge part of the story, so for example, Ron and Hermione, right? They aren't the chosen one, but they still have a huge part of the story, right? The reason that is so good and so well done is because of the fact that they are all their own real characters, having their own story, doing their own thing, but they're doing so to help the main character, ultimately. So give them a reason, give the side character a reason, whether it's their best friend, whether it's the older brother figure, that they want to be helping this main character. If they don't want to be helping this main character, that's when sometimes they end up stepping into the spotlight because there's a place to fill. There's shoes that need filling and they're gonna fill them. But if you don't have shoes that need filling and you don't have that spotlight available, and it's like, no, this story is clearly about so-and-so, and there's no doubting it, and you have to help so-and-so or else the world is going to end, or else, I don't know, you won't go to prom, depending on what you're writing. I don't know. I was trying to think of a realistic fiction situation, but I don't read a whole lot of realistic fiction. Then you're going to want to make sure that those shoes are already filled. And there's a reason why they want to help the main character fill those shoes. They don't want to be part of those shoes. And why is that? They have different goals. They have different dreams, right? So how are they going to help the main character but still stay in their own role? Why do they like their role? Why do they not want to take the spotlight? Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hello, good to see you. All right, any other questions about writing? We could do character, plot. Like I said, this is an open book day. Ask me anything you want about writing in general. There we go. I was like, there's a thinking
How do
phase.
you, so I know that you should, for the most part, try to show, not tell.
Yes.
But how do backstories work? Because
Backstories, yes.
I feel like is just telling.
It pretty much is. So, with backstories, here's the trick with how to show, not tell with backstories, because I agree, backstories are really tricky to not just like bleh, all the telling all at once. You know, do the classic Star Wars, in a galaxy far, far away, there was. Yeah, it's hard not to do that, right? Because there's so much information that they need to know that they don't know, that you're like, I'm gonna go crazy if you don't know this. I would say oftentimes backstory will reveal itself as you're showing the situation they're in. So for example, I am currently working with a novel, and this person is dealing with some parents who aren't very nice. They're kind of emotionally traumatic. They're problematic a little bit. And they don't have to say, my parents are emotionally abusive and I'm having problems in the realistic fiction. They don't have to say that. The reason why is because they walk into a room and they're already being berated by their parents. That is showing the backstory of, this has clearly been going on a long time. This is not just today. This has been happening for a while. So oftentimes circumstances can be shown in a way that helps show you what the backstory is. However, if you need to absolutely tell a backstory, then I would say the best way to do that is, again, dialogue. Dialogue is one of your very best friends with tactful telling. Especially because if someone is getting to know a stranger, for instance, they're falling in love with someone, and they're like, I just don't know what to do, I feel like I should trust you, but I can't, and the person's like, well, why do you feel like you shouldn't trust me? And the person's like, I just can't, and then he's like, why do you feel like you shouldn't trust me? You know, the classic escalating thing, and then finally they turn around and they're like, because my last partner died, or something like that, you know? They're like, whoa, okay, there's a backstory there, but you don't have to tell us all about that. All you had to tell us was that argument, because now we're aware something bad happened. We don't even need to know the circumstances. We don't even need to know where, who, when. We just know they had a partner and they died. And clearly it was traumatic because it's messing them up. They're having serious problems with it. So I would say oftentimes with backstory, show based on the situation they're in. If there's something that is absolutely critical that you're like, if they miss this detail, it's not going to make any sense, then I would recommend, kind of like I said with Gwen earlier, that you mold the world around them to be obviously different. For example, Shirley, oh no, is her first name Shirley or her last name? The Lottery, the story of the lottery. It's very dark, it's very depressing. I'm sorry if you haven't read it. But basically, if you have read it, because most English classes here in Utah require it for some reason, It's very dark, and you can tell that it's very dark because from the beginning, you get weird, ominous things going on, right? And so if you have something like that with a backstory, this whole town clearly has a history with this lottery thing going on, right? But they never say, today is the lottery, and the lottery is when one person draws a black spot and we all stone them to death. They don't say that. They could, but they don't. They just show you the fact that this town is different from other towns. And what makes it different? The kids are joyfully grabbing rocks and putting them in piles. That's weird. Then everyone's saying like the next town over's crops all died because of the fact that they didn't do the lottery. What idiots. That's also weird, right? You're continuing to develop this kind of weird, hinky vibe around the town, and you're like, this feels off. And so if you're doing something like that, where it's the setting that needs a backstory, then I would absolutely say, show what's different about this culture that is making it so dark or so interesting or so different that it's important to your backstory. Did that help at all?
Yeah, so like
Okay.
you're just showing little details here and there, like with
Yes.
the person who
Mhm.
their like partner died.
Yes.
You could have like they've got photos all over of some mysterious person
Exactly.
in the house. And
Exactly.
The whole time
And-
they're wondering like, who in the world is this?
Mhm.
Is this like your sister or something? And they're like, no, it's not important.
Yep, exactly. Just like that, because then you get this vibe of something's going on here and I don't know what it is. And it helps the reader want to keep reading because they want to discover what it is with the other character who's discovering it. Absolutely. Yeah, that was a great example. Any other questions about writing? In particular, you seem to have a thoughtful face. Or am I mistaken? That's okay. I have the papers with your review downstairs, so I will grab those as soon as the lesson is over. Any questions about a specific genre, I can even talk to you about the publishing process if you have questions about the publishing process. I worked with a publisher for 9 months before I went on my own as an editor freelancer. Yes.
Tell me about the publishing process.
Absolutely. I can do that. So, with the publishing process, or at least my experience of it in the 9 months that I was part of a traditional publishing company, and then I decided this is not for me. Typically, or at least this is what Monster Ivy did. Thank you, Monster Ivy, for this experience. They are a fabulous company. I would recommend getting published with them. It just didn't work out for me because I wanted to work with independently publishing authors, not traditional. So, with the traditional publishing process, I would say the benefits of traditional publishing, because I'm going to put this up front just because independently publishing is just as good as traditional. The only difference is what you're looking for. With traditional, they're probably going to market for you. They're going to hire an editor for you. They know what they're looking for as far as a cover artist goes, because the funny thing about cover art is that you might love your cover that you have designed as an independent person, but doesn't mean that it's in style. Doesn't mean it's what people are looking for. And unfortunately, that's the case. Have you ever looked at a cover that's like 50 years old and been like, I don't want to read that? The reason why is because that's outdated. And publishers know what's in vogue, what's in date, what they can do to market your book as hardcore as they possibly can. Now, the one drawback I will say is it depends on the publisher. Monster Ivy, hence why I recommend them, is super sweet, super nice, and they're an up-and-coming company, which means they're more willing to work with you. The big five, however, the big ones like Shadow Mountain, they're probably more likely to say, we're doing your cover art, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. And they're going to move on. Some people are nicer, but I will say generally they'll just give you a cover art and say this is what's gonna sell, so hopefully you like it. So that's the one drawback I will say with traditional publishing is there's a lot of things that you don't have control over. However, they also do all the marketing, which is very hard, let me tell you right now. And cover art is very expensive, and editors are also very expensive. I try to be as cheap as possible, but most editors are way more expensive than me. So, with that being said, traditional publishing generally works like this. You find a publishing company that you want to go through. You find a publishing company that you feel like works for you. And the reason I say works for you is, for example, Monster Ivy does creepy stories. If you wanted to publish a romance story to Monster Ivy that was not remotely creepy and it's the fluffiest Regency romance you've ever seen, probably going to get rejected. Just because of the fact that that's not what they're looking for. You got to make sure that whatever they're publishing fits within the genre that you're already doing. Generally, you probably want to look at the books that you're already reading that have inspired you to write this book. If it's a gothic novel and you flip it open and you want to see who the publisher is, you can say publishers like, and then type in that publisher in your search bar, and you're going to get a lot of good publishers. That'll probably fit your style. That being said, once you find a publisher, now the question is, how popular are they? If they are very low on the totem pole, they probably won't require an agent. However, that also probably means that their marketing, unless some random influencer picks it up, is probably going to be very low. You're probably not going to sell as many books with them. However, that doesn't mean you shouldn't go with them. There have been little publishers, like the publisher that did J.K. Rowling was technically up and starting when they published her, and now look at it. So you can still be the person who creates this publishing company, who makes it happen, but you don't want to guarantee that, because unfortunately, the writing world is hard. It's like swimming in a giant pool of fish. It's scary and chaotic and confusing. That being said, if you want a publisher halfway up the totem pole, they may or may not require an agent. Some people do half unagent, half agented. Words are hard. So with that being said, because of the fact that half of them are agented and half of them are not, they generally have different publishing times. And by publishing times, I mean that is when you're going to want to query with them and send in your manuscript and your query. Now, when I say manuscript, you're going to want to make sure it's not only a complete manuscript, but that you have gone over it and edited it and had beta readers read it as many times as possible. Because the key thing that's why ultimately why I stopped going with traditional publishing is that there were times when I was helping hone people's writing and work on writing, and it was great. And then they said, okay, now it's time for us to pick who goes. And I'm going, oh, people have to go. We can't just keep them all. They have to go, unfortunately. They can't keep all their submissions. As a result, what are the first things that go? Things with plot hole problems, character problems, and world building problems. Those are the first three things to go. If it has any of those problems, those are hard enough to edit and fix that when you're going through a traditional publisher, they're generally going to say, this person doesn't have any plot holes and this person does. We like this story more, but it's going to be easier. So that one gets slid across. And ultimately, that is why I left, because I was like, I love Monster Ivy so much, and I would love to keep, like, they have applications open every once in a while to keep interning with them and working with them. I was going to re-intern with them, but then after I saw that, I was like, you know what? I believe that everyone gets a chance to be published, and I hate having to say, no, you can't be published just because it's too hard. And again, Monster Ivy has to do that. All traditional publishers have to do that. It's nothing against them. It just didn't work for me, because my motto is that, again, like I said at the beginning, everything just needs polish. And I believe it doesn't matter the amount of polish, everything can still have worth and value. And I know that they probably believe that too, but because of the fact that they're a company, they ultimately cannot help everyone. And I want to do that. So that's why I became freelance. Anyway, moving on. Just wanted to clarify, Monster Ivy's beautiful. I love that, but just wasn't for me. That being said, after you get past the first round, because there are 2 rounds of acceptance. You might be accepted the first time, or you can get one of 3 things. You can get rejection, which hurts and sucks and it's painful, but we can survive. Or you can get a revise and resubmit. Now that one's tricky, because ultimately with the accepted, they're going to start working up a contract, they're going to send you to an editor, it's going to just smoothly move along. However, with revise and resubmit, that's why I say, here's the second part. If you get a revise and resubmit, that basically means there is something wrong with the book, but it's good enough. It doesn't have the basic problems. The something that's wrong maybe is it's not enough words, or they feel like the main character needed more motivation or something. Something that's a small problem that you can probably easily fix. Now the tricky part with that is that you don't always get a yes just because you revise and resubmit it. That's another hard part about traditional publishing, is sometimes they say revise and resubmit, and you're like, yes! So that means if I fix this, they'll publish me. Not always, unfortunately. I wish I could say yes, always, but no. And even if you have a professional editor, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get higher acceptance rates, unfortunately. It's just part of the process. So with that being said, you revise it, you resubmit it, you get either a yes or a no the second time. And if you get a no, you ultimately just have to keep moving on. I will say it's really hard to get accepted, and it's not because you're a bad writer, okay? It's not. I want to make sure that's very clear to all of you guys. One day, if you decide to go with writer/author as your profession, it's gonna be freaking hard. Jennifer A. Nielsen, who wrote the False Prince series, generally considered one of the USA Times Today best-selling authors, she was at a writing conference and she held up a stack this thick of rejection letters. And she's a USA Times best-selling author. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad author just because you get a lot of rejections. Stephen King, famous, has lots of his things made into movies, right? He had a nail on the wall and he kept putting rejection letters on the nail. He needed a bigger nail. He ran out of space. And these are famous people. It's not that you're a bad writer because you get rejected 1,000 times. Most of the greatest writers of history have been rejected 1,000 times. The only person I can think of who's an exception to that rule is Brandon Sanderson, but he's special. We'll put him in a timeout in a corner.
He's in Witcher, he doesn't count.
No, he doesn't count. Clearly there's something going on. I don't know what he's doing, worshiping some author deity we don't know about? I don't know. But he's interesting. He's the only author that's famous that I've ever run into that was only rejected, I think, 3 times. But even then, 3 times. So, maybe far less than the other people, but that doesn't necessarily mean wasn't rejected, didn't have a hard time. Heck, J.K. Rowling, like we've been talking about today, oh my gosh. The funniest part is still to me the fact that it had been on the rejection pile when the person who decided to publish it picked it up. It was on the rejection pile and they were waiting in the office bored and they picked it up. They almost lost the biggest deal of their lives. So like, honestly, you never know. It's not about your writing. It's really not. You never know how long it's going to take you to be successful, and that's okay. That being said, the next best way to get traditionally published is to find an agent. So this is when I also say, again, 2 steps. Most publishing processes take 2 steps. I highly recommend just writing another book while you're waiting for your first one to get published because it's going to take probably that long, unfortunately. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to query an agent, and then the agent has to like the manuscript. Then the agent has to find someone else who's going to like the manuscript. But the best part about the agent, they won't tell you, oh, you've been rejected 1,000 times. They'll just do it until they get it accepted. So you don't even have to know. However, unfortunately, that does mean you can be rejected by agents as well. You have to find an agent that's going to like you, that's going to like your style, and is going to want to stand up for you. Because the whole point of having an agent is they get a cut of your pay. And so they want to like your story because ultimately, if they don't like it, why are they trying to sell it? So, and again, it's not because you're a bad author. It's because of the fact that, I don't know, they might not like horror. And you sent them a horror. You know, who knows? It's not because you're a bad author, it's just also because people have different tastes. That's part of the reason why when I do the writing contest that I do every month here, I have generally 2 to 3 graders, 2 at minimum. And the reason why is because I realize that one person might not like a certain style and one person might love that style. And so ultimately it's going to change how the story moves forward and whether or not it gets accepted. And that's okay. Ultimately, it's not about you, it's about the process. Do you have any other questions about the traditional publishing process?
How would you find an agent?
How would you find an agent? Very similar to how you find a publisher. I would highly recommend looking up who is the agent for fill-in-the-blank author that has inspired you and writes in a similar genre as you. You're probably going to find... Sanderson is a special case.
Yeah.
Okay? His editor, Moisha, like, oh my gosh. He's a wonderful person. I always see him on the podcast and everything that Brandon Sanderson does, but like... It takes a special kind of editor to get rid of 2/3 of what is already a Bible-thick freaking novel. Anyway, yeah, he basically said in the podcast, yeah, I have to delete 2/3 of his novel. I'm like, it's already this thick! That means it was like yay thing? Like, it's insane. So yeah, Moisha is a special case. Bless their heart. They're amazing. Like, truly bless them. So with finding an agent, you're going to want to look up, hey, which authors had what agents. You're probably going to find similar agents. However, you also want to be aware of scammer agents and scammer editors and scammer publishers. Yay! The delightful world of being scammed. I'm not trying to scare you, I'm just trying to prepare you because I don't want any of you guys to get scammed because I love you guys. Even though I haven't even met 3 of you, you seem like lovely people. So, with being aware of scams, editors, there is a site called Author Beware or Writer Beware. I think there's both. But Author Beware and Writer Beware, both of those will help you avoid scammer agents, editors, and publishers. Why? Because of the fact that that is a pretty comprehensive list. However, of course, scammers are born every day, and they change their names. And yay. The delight, that is that. So in order to best avoid that, I would say look up people who are legitimate editors, legitimate publishers, and legitimate agents. Through, like I said, the whole who is the agent of fill in the blank. And when you find those people, generally look at what they are doing. Do they have you pay up front? Generally, most people don't. That's a big red flag. Do they have you sign a contract? Generally, most people do. And if they don't, again, red flag. So there's generally all these kind of just red flags you can look for. Look at the legitimate people, and if the other person isn't doing those things, probably either a scammer or doesn't know what they're doing, which means that it's not going to be good anyway. There's a lot of people who say out there, I am an editor. And what they meant is they got an English degree 7 years ago and haven't used it since. So that's a problem. And sure, they might be able to catch a few commas, but are they going to catch your developmental plot holes? Probably not. So, with that being said, another thing, the last thing that I'm going to talk about with traditional publishing and being aware is vanity presses. If they ask you to pay up front in order to publish their book, a real traditional publishing company will not make you pay up front. They'll pay you, not the other way around. If you're doing the other way around, it's what's called a vanity press, and that basically is how 90% of cheesy romance novels that we all dislike get published. Because people are just like, I desperately want my romance novel to get published, and they're like, well, we'll publish it for you if you pay $200, and they're like, deal. But the problem is that their editors just go, blah, 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 no typos, okay, good. They don't really go through it in a lot of depth. So, vanity presses are not going to give you the quality book you want, ultimately, and you're going to be paying for something that may not get you anywhere. Honestly, I'd independently publish before I'd ever use vanity press. Speaking of which, if you have any questions about independently publishing, I can also answer those. Any other questions? Good? Okay. How about opening it up to the rest of the room? Any other questions? We can talk about independently publishing. We haven't talked a lot about plot today. We can talk about individual genres, if there are things you're worried about with that. We can talk about villains. We can talk about redemption arcs. Yes?
So, as a teen writer, my
Yes.
budget is very low.
Oh, yes. Your budget is through the floor. I understand that. Me
Is
too.
there any like websites that you could recommend that are like really good for like thesaurus.com? You can
Yeah.
find like a ton of synonyms or stuff
Yeah.
for different words to like just add a bit more detail,
Mhm.
or like just random sites.
Resources for writers that are borderline free, if not free. Is that what we're going for?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I was, again, understanding the question, because sometimes I just ramble off and I don't know what's happening, and that's bad. So, free resources for writers. Brandon Sanderson's podcast. It has a little bit, I will say it has a little bit of interesting things, but that's because they're adults. So, I would say maybe have your parents listen to the first 5, and if they're okay with that, then you can listen to the rest. But the only reason I say that is because I don't know what your parents are comfortable with you listening to. And sometimes they are adults, they get a little interesting.
I mean, you don't have to know. I'm kidding.
Gwen. So, I will say Brandon Sanderson's podcast, Writing Excuses, is a fabulous resource if your parents allow you to listen to them, just because, like I said, they try to keep it clean, but it is still PG-13 clean, and I don't know what level of PG-13 your parents are all acceptable with. So, let your parents decide on that one. I am not going to tell you to do it. I do not want to get in trouble for that. I will also say there are plenty of other writing podcasts out there. One, Marissa Meyer, I believe, has one. Something Happy Author or something. I can't remember the full title, but look up Marissa Meyer writing podcast, and it'll probably pop up. She hasn't advertised it recently, so I don't remember what it's called. But she has another great one. She does it with a bunch of other authors. They're great. I will say there's another resource for teen authors. However, this does cost money, but I will tell you it's worth the cost, so I'm going to say it anyway, even though this does cost money, okay? And I'm going to tell you how to save money on it. So, there's also a thing in Utah specifically called Teen Author Bootcamp. You're familiar with this. However, with Teen Author Bootcamp, it is an exorbitant expense. It's very expensive.
Oh yeah, it's pretty expensive. They also get stuff like water bottle, string pad,
Exactly.
t-shirts, stuff like
It's
that.
expensive for a reason. They give you a backpack that's with the theme. They give you a water bottle that's with the theme. Like you said, they give you a notebook. You not only get to go to a conference with a ton of authors all day long, but they also provide lunch. So like ultimately,
And that's
the
when they
costs.
pass out free books during lunch.
Yeah, and sometimes they do book raffles and things like that. So honestly, the cost, even though it is a lot, is ultimately reasonable considering what you get. However, I'm going to tell you how to save money on that. You're going to want to save money with what's called early bird pricing. Yay! So it's typically in March. Start looking for stuff actually right about now. They sell tickets for about, I don't want to say how much percentage off do they sell it for their little fancy Christmas deal that they do, Gwen? I don't know. My parents always bought it during Christmas because that was,
right.
they do like a huge sale during Christmas
Yeah.
and do like a massive percentage off. I can't remember how much, but it's a massive percentage
Yeah.
off. So if you're going to buy it, just ask for it as a Christmas present. That's what I did. I just said, Mom, as a Christmas present, can you just get me a ticket to Teen Author Bootcamp? Because it's expensive enough that you can just count it as a Christmas present, and then it's still discounted. Because it's going to get more and more expensive the closer to March it gets.
Oh.
So, another thing that is actually far less expensive because you guys are students, Life, the Universe, and Everything is a writing conference. It's
Yes.
a 3-day writing conference.
Yes.
All day, all 3 days. It's fantastic. It's beautiful. I love it. And the best part is, students get a serious discount. If you are a student, which I'm assuming you all are, if you are not, I'm worried about you. Please come talk to me. And please go to school, children. Then all you have to do is basically prove that you are part of that school district, whether it's with a student ID or if generally you have a student ID if you're in junior high or high school. So most of the time they're going to ask for your student ID, but you can also just have your parents come and certify. Yes, they are you, who goes to school. But generally they're going to ask for your student ID when you get there, and you get a severe discount. Like normally it's like, what, $75 a day?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and it's like, what is it? How much is it for students again? It's so little. I don't want to
It's
say
like-
too little.
Like, I think, now don't trust my memory because it's iffy.
Okay.
But I think it's like $5 to $15, $20-ish per day if you get the discount. It's much cheaper.
Yes, it's much cheaper. It's basically just skip going out to eat a few times and you can go. So it's very reasonable. So as a result of that, even though those are all things that still cost money, those are things that are a huge, great resource.
Totally worth it.
Totally worth it for the cost.
They both have free stuff tables, by the way.
They also both have free stuff tables, yes. So if you feel like your cost isn't quite worth it, you can just hog the free stuffs table. Just take a whole bunch of stuff home with you. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes this last Life, the Universe, and Everything conference, they had a box full of free DVDs and a box full of free books.
And the stickers.
And stickers and all sorts of fancy things. Yes.
What is that?
It's the writing conference that I was talking about.
No, like when?
Oh, when is that? Sorry, I heard what is that, and I was like,
No.
wait, what? Sorry, brain totally misheard you. When is that? That is in February, so you're probably going to want to buy the tickets again either now or January.
It's the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of the week of Valentine's Day.
Yeah. So, probably, like I said, going to want to buy tickets in January or December because of the fact that they're going to be discounted. If you start buying them in February, they're going to be more expensive. So you got to buy them in December or January. Or at least, in my opinion, if you want to save money, you got to buy them in December or January. You don't have to, I guess. You can spend more money if you desire. But that is typically what I would recommend. I would love to see you all there. I saw some of the other Writers Club kids there, and it was delightful. So
I saw you there.
I saw you there. Yes, and then there was even one girl who hasn't come in a little bit because she's had a lot of after-school stuff, and I saw her there too. So it's great. I will definitely for sure be there. So I would love to see y'all there too.
100% worth it.
As far as other free resources, if you have Kindle Unlimited, I recently discovered through the writing conference we had on Saturday, one of the authors introduced me to what is called the, I want to say, emotional thesaurus, I think is what it's called. Either that or emotional. Yeah, the emotional thesaurus, yes. I wasn't sure if you were there for that part because you came part of the way through the source, but yeah, through the story. But yes, she said that is free through, that is through Kindle Unlimited. So Kindle Unlimited is a cost. However, if you have it, it's borderline free, and the Emotional Thesaurus was definitely a great resource that I think I will be using.
I'm pretty sure with Kindle Unlimited you get access to like a
Mhm.
bookstore too. Like,
Exactly.
not just that, so.
Exactly. Not just that. So ultimately, I think it's worth the price. These are all things I'm talking about. They're either worth the price or free. I haven't done a lot of free stuff yet, just because the free stuff, unfortunately, is very small. Sniffles. I wish there was more free stuff. So as far as free stuff that are resources for writers, Facebook pages. They actually have author Facebook pages where you can ask things, you can talk to people. Generally, they're going to be lower on the totem pole authors. You probably won't get to have a private chat with Brandon Sanderson, but you can still talk to people.
My
Ask for his toilet paper.
My
You're
brother
fancy.
got to play Magic the Gathering one-on-one against Brandon Sanderson.
That was pretty impressive. So some people are special like that, but most people will probably. But they do have author Facebook pages you can talk to. I would also recommend getting yourself a writing Instagram because Bookstagram, let me tell you, they're actually a very friendly community. As a person who is advertising my editing services on there, they are so friendly. And they're generally really nice people. Most of them, some of them are not, but that's because that's how life is.
But it's social media.
Exactly.
You're always going to find a jerk 700.
Or 7, or 1,000,000. But that's okay. Most of the time I will say they're a super friendly community and they're super supportive, and if you want to ask them anything, they'll probably answer any questions you have. So that's another great author resource. I will also say, as far as being a teen author, other great resources, our library. I am an editor professionally, and I will edit your stuff for free because you are part of this program. You are getting my services, which are typically 1 cent per word, for free. That means that your 50,000 word novel is free instead of $500. So this is a good resource. Not to brag, but this is a good resource. I promise you guys, if you come, you're getting a good deal. I'm going to want to help you, and I'll want to do everything I can to help you. Trust me. If you're looking for an agent, if you're looking for a publisher, I will help you fight to find those resources. I would gladly help you find those resources. If you're looking for magazines that you want to publish short stories in, like Ray Bradbury did until he published his novels, I also know where those resources are. Please just ask. I will happily give you resources and help you. I want to help you. The other thing I will say is that we do a lot of conferences with independently published authors and traditionally published authors. Oh, shoot, let me check my phone, actually. We have a bunch of author things that we're doing on Monday starting in August, and I can't remember if it starts today or next week. So give me 1 second to double check that. Oh, no, yep, I'm already at the library. Thanks, GPS, for being confused. Yes, I'm here. My GPS still thinks I'm not at the library and I'm standing in the building. All right, so let's see. Yes, I can't remember who it is that is coming, but we have an author actually coming tonight. I would have to go to the front desk to ask for more information about that, but we have authors coming every Monday, pretty much, for the next 4 weeks. So if you're looking for a traditional or independently published author to talk to, today is actually a good day. Thank you for coming, Harmony. That is an excellent question. I will have to go talk to the front desk as soon as we finish. We have another 15 minutes to ask questions. So once we finish, I will go talk to them and figure out who it is and when, because I just wrote in my notes in big bold letters, author is coming, tell the children. So I don't actually remember any of the details. So that's pretty much how it works when you have ADHD. Anyway, moving right along. So we do a lot of author conferences here, independently published, traditionally published, and heck, we did an all-day writers conference last Saturday. So we do a lot of free resources here at the library. And if you're looking for free resources to talk to people, I can ask people. I actually know a lot of different author and editor contacts that I can ask them questions. Sure, I'm not able to like give you their email, but I can definitely, if you're like, I have a big question about how to write Latina characters better. I know an author who came on Saturday who writes Latin American fiction. And so I can be like, hey, I can ask her some questions for you. So I have lots of resources as well that I would be happy to share with you. I love being able to share resources with the community. Also, there are lots of community resources, even just, I know that Masterclass has a subscription fee that you have to pay. However, thank you for coming. However, they also have lots of articles that are for free about authors and writing and how to write. Honestly, a lot of my lessons, I double check with them to see if they have anything that disagrees with what I'm telling you, just to make sure. Because they have a lot of free articles on writing, and they're written by professional authors. So that's another great resource. I will also say that as far as resources go, Readsy is another good one, especially because of the fact that they have a lot of editors that are professional on there, but they also have a kind of Wattpad-like platform where you can publish your stuff without having it being edited. But the best part is, if you submit to their monthly contests, they will assign you someone else's story to read and give feedback on, which means other people will be assigned to read your story as well. So you'll get feedback from complete strangers, which makes it even more honest in my opinion. Because honestly, most of the time people are like, I'm gonna have my family beta read my book. I'm sorry.
Ow, no.
Family and friends do not make good beta readers. You love them, you want them to read your book, absolutely. Not telling you to not have them read your book, just saying that they will probably not notice the giant gaping plot hole because they love you.
I don't know. My little sister's kind of brutally honest.
That's fair. Some members are different. I will say that with my friends, they know they can come to me to be brutally honest, but then again, it's also because I'm a trained editor. So they know that I'm just going to say, yeah, listen, there's a problem. So I get it. Some family members will be better than others. But I will say it is good to get some feedback from complete strangers. Make sure you trust these complete strangers so they don't steal your work. But at the same time, if you have like a cousin's cousin who is willing to read your stuff, do that. Because they are less likely to be biased because they know you. And I will say honestly, I'm even the same way. Even though I would highly recommend that friends and family come to me, I will also tell them, yeah, get an actual professional editor that isn't me, because I know you very well. So I might just gloss over things that you normally have a problem with. I will say it's a little easier with you teens, because of the fact that you're up and starting. So as a result, a lot of your mistakes are going to be a lot more glaring to me because of the fact that I'm used to working with adults as a professional. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I won't also miss some things because of the fact that, like Gwen, you've been here almost 2 years? At least a year.
So.
At least a year,
Yeah.
if not
Very
longer. So as a result, I've gotten to know her style a lot better, and there are times when Miranda or my friends who are editors who I have judged the story contests each month will point out things, and I'm like, oh, I totally missed that. I'll be honest, I missed it. Because I catch about 90% of things, but over time I will get to know your style, and unfortunately that does mean it's going to be harder for me to catch those things. And I'll just be honest about that. But if you're brand new here, fantastic, you have the advantage. Because I have no idea what you're going to throw at me. However, I will still catch about 90%, I will say, of errors, even if I know you super, super Any other questions that we have? We have another 10 minutes, so we can probably do either 2 more long answer questions or several short ones. Yes.
Tips on writing emotion.
Emotion, the hardest thing of all. Because sometimes we don't even want to face our own emotions, right? So sometimes writing emotion is hard. It was actually funny. We had this whole thing on emotional roller coasters in writing on Saturday, and she asked me, what is the hardest part about writing emotion? And she was asking everyone, and I said, don't want to handle our own. And she's like, I feel called out. And I'm like, right? Okay, sometimes emotions are hard, especially deep, hard emotions, and especially emotions we've never experienced, right? You guys might have never experienced a breakup. You guys might have never experienced a parent dying. You guys might have never experienced falling in love and getting married. But you want to write about that stuff, maybe. I don't know.
I hope not. And the teen writers can't.
To be fair, thank you for coming. I will say, I actually read during the last writing contest that we did that you participated in, there were 3 stories from teens that were all about romance, one of them in which they get married. So I will say, it is still a thing. I appreciate you, but also, surprisingly, no. So, some teens want to write about romance and getting married because they desperately want to get married, and I do not blame them. I'm very happily married. It's nice. But at the same time, it's hard. If you've never done that before, you have no idea what it's like, so trying to write that realistically is hard. However, keep in mind, when writing emotion, you also have no idea what it feels like to write on the back of a dragon, right? But you can describe that pretty well. Why?
Because it's imagination.
Exactly. So I will say with emotions, and especially emotions you don't know, try to use your imagination about what that would feel like. Try putting you in their shoes for just a quick second. Just close your eyes and think, okay, what if X happened to me? And let your brain go crazy. Like, don't let it go too crazy to the point where you're like, pterodactyls should come out of the sky. Whoa! Like, keep it within realistic boundaries. But at the same time, just sit there for a second and be like, how would I feel if X happened to me? And let yourself go to the ultimate worst conclusion, dial it back about 2 notches, and it's probably about realistic. Actually. Hate to say it, life's rough. If you're writing deep, dark emotions.
That's the deal.
It is. Life's not fair. That's why it's fair. Sobs in corner. Anyway, so yes, Eleanor.
I feel like especially if you're writing it from the person's perspective,
Yes.
going through the tough
Mhm.
emotion, it feels way worse,
Yes.
I feel like, than if you're just like looking out on it.
Absolutely,
And
yes.
you might look at it and be like,
Mhm.
why are they like crying so much? Like,
Yes.
that wasn't a big deal. But for them, it's like they have some really bad like social anxiety or whatever.
Mhm.
So going up in front of that crowd and giving a speech
Oh yeah.
was really, really hard for them.
Yes, exactly. Everyone has different experiences and everyone feels different things. Honestly, we all get offended at different things that other people might not. We all get sad at things that people might not. We all get scared at things that people might not. Thank you. That was a great example. So honestly, when it comes to writing emotion, I would say definitely imagine the worst or the best, depending on what is going on, whether it's romance or grief, and then dial it back about 2 notches. And that's about realistic. The reason I say that's about realistic is because some people genuinely, bam, it's just insane. It's crazy. Life is hard and difficult, and sometimes you just want to scream and explode. But, like, that doesn't mean everyone's going to react that way, right? And so it's good to dial it back about 2 notches, I would say, purely because that is going to help it feel more realistic, even if not everyone would react that way. And if you are going to have someone who reacts really volatilely, you need to have a reason for it. Just to make sure that the reader fully understands, because they might not fully understand that emotion themselves. So you have to actually explain it to them. Explain how that emotion works to them, because they don't understand it like you do. And whether or not you've gone through it, they don't understand it like you do because they don't see it the way that you see it. So with writing tough emotions, I will say another thing that was mentioned on the emotional roller coaster thing that was the all-day writing conference. I don't know if she has a thing on this, but Natalie Briand was the one who taught that. She talked about what's called the objective correlative and how helpful it is to write emotions. And I was actually shocked because I was like, oh my gosh, she's right, but I've never thought about it before. With the objective correlative, it is when you take something that is a physical object or a metaphorical thing and you turn it into a helpful way of like spinning the emotion. So for example, the example she gave was instead of just saying she was sad or tears streamed down her face. Those are both powerful to, like, she was sad being the least powerful, tears streaming down her face, powerful. But then she gave this one, Natalie Briand. Quoting again Natalie Briand to make sure that you guys know this is not me. She had the girl looking at a photo album and talking about how even the pictures of herself and her friends felt like ghosts. Now that hits hard, right? You're like, something's wrong here. I feel it in my gut. She's taking an object and making it so that you view this object differently. And by seeing how she views this object, you're feeling the emotions that she feels, right? And so ultimately it's taking that and twisting it into something new. Or like, pretty much everyone there was an Avatar The Last Airbender fan, which is kind of funny. If you haven't seen Avatar The Last Airbender, I'm going to semi-spoil something, but also watch it, please. It's a really good example of like character, plot, all the things. So, Zuko, when he chops off his ponytail, that is a metaphorical thing that helps us feel the emotions he's feeling. He's chopping off his ponytail, as far as, everyone else could tell watching that scene. They're like, weirdo, chopping off his ponytail. But if you know the series, you're like, that scene though, because you understand that this is a metaphorical thing, not just a physical thing. You understand that this object has significance. And why does it have significance? For so many reasons. Do you have a question?
It signifies the Fire Nation.
Yes, it signifies him cutting himself off from his family and the Fire Nation. Absolutely. Thank you. Perfect answer. It gives so much more depth to him and what he's going through and what he's feeling, right? So, objective correlative. And now, again, I will also quote Natalie Briand. She said, use it very sparingly. Try not to overwhelm your book with objective correlatives, otherwise they all lose their meaning. But if you have like a good amount of them, it helps bring flavor and meat to what is otherwise just basic. And that's okay. But that's why we have it, is to help bring that in there. So when writing emotions, that is what I would recommend, actually. She did a great class on it. If she has it recorded, I will send it to you. We will see if I can find it. Yes.
It's just like you were saying earlier, like how you use salt sparingly.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yes.
like how you use any type of spice.
Yes.
You don't use a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can use different types
Yes.
of it.
Exactly. You can use different types. You can vary it. You can change it. You want highs and lows. You don't want this perpetual kind of mini, because then it gets boring, right? You want those drastic highs where they're like, oh my gosh, I'm in love, and you want those drastic lows when you're like, I'm falling through the floor because they broke up with me. Like, you want those drastic highs and lows. You don't want it to be all the time, but you want some of those because then it helps you relate to the character really deeply. Yes.
Yeah, something to go along with that. My sister was talking, I think, yesterday, where that like with life you can have ups and downs.
Yes.
And someone was comparing that to a heartbeat. It goes
Yeah.
up and down. If it's a straight line, you're dead.
Yeah, that's valid. Very valid. Your story's dead if it's going in a straight line, guys. I'm sorry. It needs to have a heartbeat. I agree. It needs to have ups and downs. It needs to be up and down different, too, like with an actual heartbeat. There are flutters, right, where you get panicked. Or there's adrenaline when it's pumping super fast. You need difference in highs and lows, just like you need differences in a heartbeat. I like that. I like that a lot. Yes?
How can I get it so my readers like the characters so much that when I kill them off,
They sob and they die in a corner a little bit. Yeah. We all secretly want that as authors. Even if we also don't want to make our readers cry, we're all secretly like when we do it.
Oh my gosh,
So-
yes. I like torturing my characters and my readers. I have problems.
I have problems. Yes, I feel that. So, that being said, with character creation and wanting to create a character that is truly lovable and relatable, you want to make sure that they're a full-rounded human. And also, if they're a side character, like we were talking about earlier, you want to make sure that they're a full-rounded human because that's going to connect the readers to them more. Because if they're not a full-rounded human and they only exist as a cardboard cut-in to be the love interest. Yes, I am the love interest. Pat, pat, there. Like, we're not gonna care when that character dies. Like, we're not gonna care. Or like the mentor character that's like, haha, I am here. I give you
And
wise
then he
wisdom.
dies.
Then I disappear.
Gandalf.
Yes, unfortunately Gandalf is a good example of that. Do we care a lot about Gandalf?
I do.
Some people do, but the reason why is because of the fact that he's powerful, he's mysterious, right? But at the same time, it's not because we really know his backstory, right? We know nothing about him. So we care for a different reason. If you want them to care emotionally, you don't want them to disappear all the time. Now, I will say Kayla Rivera did a fantastic thing on this, again at our conference, about how to not make your characters cardboard cutouts and how to make them real, full, rich characters. So a lot of what I'm talking about actually is from her thing. So, again, like I said, our writing conferences are great free resources. So please, enjoy them. Come enjoy them because they are free and they are wonderful. Anyway, moving right along. I'm going to try to wrap this up quick because we're going over time. With trying to make people care about your characters so much that they cry when they die, you want to make sure that you've known them a long time. You want to make sure that they are likable, that they are relatable. Why do we love Zuko, for instance? But we don't love him at first, though, do we? He's a freaking brat.
Yeah.
My husband thinks that he's
Well, it
really
makes
good, like good looking. That's why they love him. And I was like,
Anyway,
Okay,
so
but that's fair though. He is. He's hot, man.
moving on from being hot, let's talk about emotionally how we connect to characters, not just So, yes.
In the book Anne of Green Gables,
Mhm.
there, I don't mean to spoil, so plug your ears or whatever.
Well,
Or skip forward 10 seconds.
But
Unless
there's a
everyone dies.
character who dies in the book,
Yes.
and it's, you can open your ears. It's just really good, like, well, really bad for
Yeah.
you emotionally
Yeah.
because you've known them the entire book, and then
Exactly.
all of a sudden
Who
it happens.
He's like, I want to know now.
You have to read it to find out.
And it's really, really sad. Like,
Yeah.
I cried so much when that character,
It's
because
because you know them.
How
It's
does
because
he
you
die?
feel them. You understand. With deaths of characters, you want to make sure that generally they last longer. They have to last at least 3/4 of the book
unless
for you to
change-
care.
Well, to make them like them, I have to write 10 books and then
I
go
still
off
disagree
on
with that. I'll be honest. I am an emotionally repressed person. Sometimes I don't cry as much as I feel like I should. If that makes sense. Like sometimes I'd be like, I want to cry, but then I don't. Yeah. I'll be honest. Brandon Sanderson. There have been some of his characters that have died, and I haven't cared.
Yeah, I mean, like,
So.
like when they're in war and like his
Yes.
buddy dies,
Yes.
that's fine because you don't have to be attached to them.
You don't have to be touched by that person. That is correct. If you don't want to be if you don't want the reader to be in tears, then it's fine if they die a few chapters in. But if you want them to be in tears, if you want them to be in pain, we're talking about reader pain here.
That's the entire goal of my book, just reader pain.
You
and
want it.
character pain.
You want at least
And just
3/4 of the
pain.
book. You want at least 3/4 of the book, and you also want to feel it coming. Now that sounds weird, right? You want to shock your readers and be like, they died, but at the same time you don't want to be so shocked that they're like, what? Like literally glasses fall off, just like confused. You want to make sure that it feels right. You want to make sure that there is a reason for their loss. That's what makes it truly hit home.
Because I really like him.
Because you, because you not only really fall in love with this character, but if they hadn't died, you know the world wouldn't be the same. If they were still alive, the world wouldn't be where it is, and maybe it needs to be where it is. For, well, if you're trying to conquer, I don't know, some sort of evil king, and if they hadn't died, you wouldn't have killed the evil king. I think they needed to die.
Yeah,
So,
for
He
example,
dies because he
Mistborn.
shoots
But
the
yes.
bad guy with an arrow, it kills him, but then it ricochets.
Exactly. Who knows? Gasp! Dang! All right. But yeah. So I will say you're right. However, I will say generally a character needs a reason to die. If you want them to truly cry. If they die with no reason, then your readers are just upset and want to yeet the book. They don't want to cry. They want to freaking toss the book until it explodes.
Yeah, there is.
So if you want anger,
Yeah.
then that is a great way to do
If
it.
you
No
like
reason.
the character
Yes.
and die for no reason, it's anger
Yes.
and not sadness, which is another fun emotion to invoke in your readers and book.
Yes.
This guy has like
serious depression because
Mhm.
every person that he tries to protect just ends up dying, and even though
Mhm.
you don't know the people, it just happens over and over and over and over again until the
Mhm.
point that you're just like, every single person that dies, you're just so angry about.
Yeah, but that's
Like,
the angry.
whole
If you
population.
want tears, you want it to be something that's worth dying for. So that's why I say it's different. If you want an emotional reaction, you can do they die for no reason or they die for a reason. But if you were looking for specifically tears, you don't want anger, right? And so anger is when there's no reason. Tears is when there is a reason. And without them, the world wouldn't be the same and it
But
needs to
they're
be this
still
way.
dead.
But they're still dead. They're still dead and they have to be. And that's why it's so upsetting. So I agree with you. I completely agree with you. But that's why I was saying specifically when it comes to evoking tears. Because yes, anger, absolutely. That sounds like a really depressing book. I don't think I could read that.
Wait, what's it called?
So, oh. But anyway, so that being said, anger is absolutely a valid emotion that you can evoke in your readers. However, if you're doing that, that's when you do the unjustified death. If you do the justified death, that's what
No, it's
brings
still
real
an
tears.
unjustified death. It's just like it
No,
happens
yeah.
every time.
Well, it
No, yeah,
feels
that's what I'm saying. That's why you
unjustified
feel angry.
because
Is because it feels unjustified as a reader. You want there to be a reason. You want there to be a reason. You had your hand raised
for
and then you.
example, if somebody gets like really sick,
Yeah.
that's kind of justified to an extent. Like
Yes.
nature happens.
Yes.
People get sick.
Mhm.
People die.
Freaking
Yes,
nature's
but-
nature's. I mean,
The point is, you don't feel as though it's justified because you love that character so much, and you're like, the world isn't the same without them.
Yes.
I want to have them back again.
Yeah.
So, build up, like, for example, an illness can be
Mhm.
really good for invoking a lot of emotion into
Mhm.
it because it's like you know it's coming,
Yes.
but you're just like kind of avoiding it in
Yes.
the back of your mind.
Yes.
To the point where when it actually happens and strikes them
Mhm.
that final time, you're just like,
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
What if I have my character die, so they're in sort of like a Matrix-like thing,
Mhm.
and he's sort of an experiment they were doing,
Okay.
and so he's
I like experiments. Continue.
and he's very unstable,
Mhm.
and so at the very end, to help everyone else escape,
Mhm.
he unstables himself more, and if he unstables himself, he's a literal walking bomb,
Got it.
and so it just self-destructs.
I would say make sure that you give him a very two things. I would say give him a very good reason for wanting to self-destruct.
Help everyone get
Preferably,
out.
preferably a friend, family member, or love interest. If they have a friend, family member, or love interest, and they look them in the eyes right before they go to explode, you're gonna hit them right in the feels, man. You're gonna freaking sucker punch those guys.
Sort of like
So-
Maze Runner thing.
Thank
where,
you,
like,
Laura.
everyone
See ya.
knows each other, and
Mhm.
they're like in this like experiment thing.
That works too. Then best
And
friend.
to help
So that fits
everyone
with the best
escape.
friend category. Yeah. So with the best friend category, I would absolutely say that that is something that you want to do. Is you want to be able to feel that deep emotion, feel that riveting experience. But you want to be able to feel it through the eyes of those that they love. You want to make sure that that relationship between those two friends is so good. Oh my gosh.
It's multiple friends.
Oh, yeah, hence why I said that friend or multiple friends, yes. Okay, I recently edited a book. and people die. I've edited a lot of books where people die recently, and I'm kind of, I'm just gonna go cry in my apartment by myself. Anyway, but recently I just actually finished one on Saturday that I finished editing, and I wasn't gonna cry. I was like, okay, they died. I'm upset, but I'm not gonna cry. Like, I got this. And then the last line, she hangs up a painting. It's called Last Summer. Anyway, so if you want to read it, please read it. It's called Last Summer. I don't know what her real name is because I only know her Instagram name. I think it's Lily Carefoot, I think is her. Yeah, I think that's her real name. So I'm not sure that's the author name she's going to use, but Last Summer by Lily Carefoot. I'm going to promote it right now. Oh gosh. So, spoiler alert, people die. And she hangs up this painting by one of the people who's died. I'm not going to say who, but people have died. She hangs up this painting. And someone asks her, "That's a beautiful painting." And she said, "Yeah, so-and-so painted it." And you're just like, go away now. Because you're like, that line ultimately really got me because of the fact that, like, it encompassed everything about the novel. Ultimately, like, you'd have to read it to fully have the impact that it did on me. But the true relationship that they had with this person, again, I'm not going to tell you lover, friend, family member, etc., but the relationship they had with this person, oh my gosh, it changed her life, and now they're gone. And so it just really hits home when she says that, because you have to realize that she has to move on without them, and she doesn't know if she's going to be okay. She just knows that she has to keep going. And it's like, it's rough. So why I'm mentioning this is because if you have someone who they really care about, family member, lover, friend, or friendsa, you got to really build up that friendship all the way up until that last moment. You got to have moments where they're teasing each other. You got to have moments where they're laughing. You got to have moments where they are sobbing because something bad happened, but they're all comforting each other, right? You've got to have the wide range of emotions. So by the time you get to the end of this book, you're so connected with this group of people that you're like, no, I would die for any of them. Like, you have to get your reader to feel that, because then when they die and they ultimately do it for their friends, oh man, that's gonna get them. Just like that painting line did for me, because you realize that there's nothing else you can do. You have to move forward, because this is the way that the book is gonna end, whether you like it or not.
Again, freaking Mistborn.
So I will say it's tough, it's hard, it's rough, it's painful.
Freaking author's making me cry. Just stop.
But at the same time,
But also continue.
But also continue. Yeah. So with that being said, I would say if you want to make your readers cry at the end, make sure that you milk that relationship for all it's worth. Make sure that you want the reader to feel like they are a part of this friend group too, and that losing any of them would absolutely destroy them. And that's why when you lose that person, you're like, didn't see that coming. What? And so you get the simultaneous sucker punch while also getting the, no, they can't die because I care. So you got to make sure they all care about each other, so the reader cares about them too. That's what I would say. All right, we're technically 12 minutes over, so if you want, you can ask one more question, but technically we've gone a little bit over time. Yes.
Also on the death of a character.
Yes,
note,
death of a character, killing off characters. We do it.
Oh, it's fun.
it is fun. Anyways, how would I write a character's story,
Mm-hmm.
but that's just the story of the character when they're on their deathbed and they're just like, it's all in their imagination and they're dying anyways, and then at the end it's finally revealed.
I would say that's a good one. I gotta say it's the good classic kind of like, how do you pull it off though? I would say make sure it's foreshadow. Make sure that you have moments where, because they're imagining it, they might have actual memories sneak in there and they have deja vu. They're going, why do I feel like this person is about ready to trip on their bike? Oh, yeah, that was weird. And things like that. Just have moments where it feels surreal and weird and not realistic. And point it out. Don't just have it feel not realistic, because then the readers will just be like, that's not realistic.
Yeah.
You gotta hang a lantern on it. Now when you hang a lantern on it, that basically means just make it obvious. Just make it obvious. And when I say obvious, I don't mean like, look, there is a giant floating banana. Like, that is too obvious. However, if you have her, like I said, have a deja vu moment or something, or him, them, whatever you'd like. I realized I didn't ask the gender of the character. But when they realize that they're having a deja vu moment, have them acknowledge that and have like maybe a friend go, hey, you okay? And they said, yeah, I just had this weird feeling of deja vu. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, just kind of acknowledge it very deliberately. And also, I would say acknowledge the fact that they're leaving. Like, have moments where, for some reason, even though they shouldn't, they have a really deep conversation about, like, yeah, I mean, it's going to be weird when you're gone. And she's like, I'm right here, you weirdos.
Oh,
Next step.
Okay. Oh my god.
And so it's like, they don't see it, and then they read it, and they're like, oh. Have lines like that where when they reread it, it makes sense. But the first time, they're kind of like, staring at you skeptically. Yes, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool,
Okay.
cool. All right. Any last questions?
I know that word.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for coming.